So, a little bit more on wind. You have to realize that the electric grid is like a cup of water that is filled to the brim, and you always must keep it exactly to the brim of the top of the glass. If you draw any out of it, you have to instantly replace it. And if you're putting water into the glass and the water draining out is reduced, you have to instantly reduce the flow into the glass. It's got to be a perfect balance. If it ever gets out of balance at all, meaning generation versus load, the whole system trips by design. So it's an amazing feat that the utilities can keep it up and balanced as well as they do. So solar and wind and most renewables can be detrimental to the system because they're not dispatchable always. If the wind's not blowing, if the sun's not shining, you can't get power out of it. But in this case, we're driving through on I-40 in Texas Panhandle, and there are all these windmills. We've been watching them slowly come alive, and you can look over here to the left. There's some that aren't even spinning or just in idle mode. This is an example of dispatchable power. As the load begins to increase on the grid, because people are turning things on, the air conditioning load is increasing, the demand, the generation must pick up along with it. The beauty of this is they can literally turn on individual windmills. These are approximately 1.5 to 3 megawatts apiece. So they can call for them, spin them up, put them online, start generating pretty quickly to meet that demand rise. And then conversely, when it falls, when the load begins to go decrease in the evening, they can start shutting these off and turn them back. And this is something that you cannot do with a thermal plant. Thermal plants are nuclear plants and coal-fired plants. They're big steam kettles. All you're doing is generating a huge amount of heat to boil water to turn a steam turbine. They're only efficient at one continuous base load, and they really don't have any practical way to turn them on and off quickly. If they do, they have to blow steam off. And if they blow the steam off and then they need the load, they need to start generating again, they can't do it. They have to heat the steam kettle up again, which takes time. So wind is obviously beneficial in this area to handle the varying load. It's not so much for solar because you can't get anything at night with solar, and right now it's pretty cloudy today. You'd be getting a fraction of what your peak output would be, and you can turn solar up and down, but again, what do you do if the sun's not shining? These high plains in this part of the country, I don't think the wind ever really does die, so it's probably been very beneficial.
Batteries.
Yep, but batteries make a huge difference because without storage, there is no storage on the grid. Every single watt that you demand, when you turn a light switch on, it has to be met instantaneously with a generator. Think of it like a governor on a generator has to literally pick up 1 watt to meet your demand. And if you turn that 1 watt back off, it has to back off instantly. And there's some inertia in the system, but it's very unforgiving. But things like pump storage facilities, hydro, which from a practical stance, they've all been built. Environmentally, there are very few left that could be built for pump storage in the United States. They're going to cost too much and take too much time to build. So what other source of storage are you going to have? There's some schemes for thermal batteries and that sort of thing, but batteries in general are going to be the key going forward, and grid batteries are coming on. But let's do some back of the envelope calculating again. Dr. Google says that one of these wind turbines runs about $1.3 million per megawatt. So let's round that up to $2 million a megawatt. It would basically take, and let's say they're 2 megawatt average, that would be 500 of them to equal a nuclear plant. At 2 megawatts apiece and $2 million, that would be $2 billion to build a equivalent amount of peak power that a single nuclear unit would put out. Plant Vogtle just put on 2 new reactors. It took them over 7 years beyond the time that they thought they were going to build them, and they thought they were going to be, I think, $7 billion for 2 units. It wound up being $35 or $36 billion for 2 units. So roughly $20 billion to build a nuclear plant took 15 plus years, from probably 20 years from the moment of conception to the time it went online. You could build a comparable amount of wind turbines for $2 billion. Add batteries, double it, put in $2 billion worth of battery storage. From a permitting, licensing, engineering, all this. Wind is a commodity. Solar is a commodity. It's not something that has to be engineered every time. They can go online quickly, and you don't have the fuel cost. Yes, there is a fuel cost for nuclear. You still have to get the uranium and the storage, which we've never dealt with. All we do is wait until it gets cool enough to cast it into big concrete blocks, and every bit of spent fuel at every commercial nuclear reactor in this country is stored on site, either in big swimming pools or in concrete casts out in a parking lot, because we've not ever come up with a scheme or approved a scheme to recycle it and process it.
Yucca Mountain.
Yeah, well, that was killed. Spent $1 trillion building a hole in the most geologically stable place probably on Earth. We spend about $1 trillion, get it built, and then they decide not in my backyard, and they killed it. And meanwhile, every nuclear plant still has every bit of its spent fuel sitting there. And, go ahead.
Back to the wind turbines. What about maintenance?
Yeah, personally, I'm not a big fan of wind. I think it's an awful lot of hassle to maintain. You basically, let's say you're looking at 500 units to equal a nuclear plant. Just knowing the way nuclear has to be done in this country, it's probably still a lot less maintenance. But if you compared it to some other form of generation, say gas turbines of comparable size, you could be doing this with one large gas turbine could do what one or two large gas turbines could do what 500 windmills could do. But you've got 500 gearboxes and 500 generators and 500 blade times 3, 1,500 blades to deal with that are 300-400 feet up in the air. If something goes wrong with them, it is a huge amount of work to repair it. But again, in the right place, and I think it probably has made sense. These are, as far as I know, private enterprise, so they're looking for a return on their investment.
Look at all those trucks.
Yep. So anyway, that's another don't know nothing rambling about nothing.